Still, we are a lot to do because we discovered possibly less than 10% of the biodiversity. The Census of Marine Life in 2010 completed the work, so we are close to 250,000 species. There are projections for either 1.5 million up to 8.5 million species to discover. At this rate, we need something like more than 700 years and several trillion euros to get there. Of course, we need to change paradigm. We need to move forward more rapidly because even though it's difficult to understand the rate of extinction of marine species, we know that species are disappearing, either locally or globally. We have little information about the species we don't know, for instance, but the rates are there and possibly increase in the future. So we need to have a census. We need to quantify that biodiversity. How? So there are several ways. The point is that we cannot be always as accurate as we need to be. So we need to develop new tools, of course, and put attention not just on the big animals, but also on tiny things that was anticipated. Here you have just an idea of the fraction of species known in the deep Mediterranean Sea. It was one of the products of the Census of Marine Life. And you can see here that even for the big animals, the large species that are easy to see and identify, our knowledge is possibly at about 50–60% or a little bit more, while 80 or more percent of the species are still to be discovered for the smaller organisms. So we need to develop new tools. Keeping into account that the marine strategy put together the biodiversity and the functioning of the systems, and so that the biodiversity of the system means a positive, often exponential relationship between the number of species and the function. So this morning we were anticipated that we need to look at the ecosystem from the point of view of the function of the ecosystem. Well, this means coming back to the structure as well, because many species means many functions means more performance in terms of ecosystems. The Work Package 5 within the votes was exactly devoted to this. So implementing, testing new tools, not inventing new one possibly, because within the frame of 4 years were not possible to invent, test, and validate tools. But taking the most promising tools, testing them, and looking if they were exploitable for the routine monitoring. This is the overall structure of what we tried to do. Of course, we couldn't cover everything. That was not our objective. We had to look at specific tools. But these tools can be more or less divided into molecular tools, so from the genomic, metagenomic, microarrays, microchips, and those so on. Tools for implementing the sampling of the biodiversity in ecosystem ways, so artificial tools, and a series of remote sensing, multi-beam, imaging, acoustic to detect, to monitor biodiversity remotely. A lot of good results came out from this project indeed. To be honest, I'm really happy about the contribution that will be given. I think that the vote will provide new tools, new elements to try to implement the monitoring at the level of the member states and possibly at the level of the European community. Of course, this means testing innovative systems in different ways, comparing this system with the current methodological approach, current monitoring approaches. So we can make a step forward if we understand the cost benefits, the advantages or disadvantages of using new tools. For instance, for remote sensing, important advancements were made in terms of detection, not just of the blooms. We know that the blooms can be detected since many years from Emiliani X-ray, from the color of the oceans and so forth. But the important implementation of that, we also know that some blooms can be either full of toxic algae or not. It can be either a source of good food or a source of toxins. So we need to discriminate that. And so far, methodologies related to identification of the toxic algae were related to go at sea and take samples. And this is likely always needed, but to different extent if we can use also remote image analysis and the optical properties and the chemotaxonomy that could implement, for instance, the possibility to determine the presence of specific taxa on the surface of the waters, and eventually also to establish the real, to map areas of risk of appearance of harmful algae on the surface waters. Of course, this is not for all taxa, and this is not, for all depths, of course, and sometimes requires specific testing with sampling on site to be sure of identification. But the advantages is that you have the possibility to warn about the risk of explosion, diffusion, and the dimension of this risk, so that we can, be aware, as we are for other, hazards towards human health, about the possibility of explosion appearance of these phenomena. Other systems were dedicated to the in situ instruments for visual detection of anthropogenic impacts. In particular, we know that one descriptor of the marine strategy is devoted specifically to the seafloor integrity and impact of seafloor integrity or non-integrity on the functioning of the ecosystems. Of course, in some cases, this is very difficult to achieve and requires advanced technology. So one important tool is offered by the facility of deploying in situ ROVs, remote topographic vehicles, that allow to detect images, make an image analysis, and detect, for instance, the presence of altered conditions that otherwise require, again, the sampling of discrete samples, so landing grabs, box score, and the analysis that requires several weeks or months or even years to detect alterations in terms of biodiversity. Especially important in the case of the analysis of recent versus older disturbance events. For instance, the possibility to use underwater hyperspectral imagery could allow to identify problems occurred even years before, and so providing evidence on the possible resilience or not to physical disturbance on the seafloor. New advancements are made also by oil companies and the maritime companies working at sea, either for the monitoring of the sea cable, sea line, pipeline, or for the problem of the important accidents that happened recently. After the BP Deepwater Horizon event, now we have a movie coming out telling about that story that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico at 1,500 meter depth. We discovered a very simple thing, that we were unable to stop an accident occur just because of the problem of drilling and the breakdown of a pipe and the whole of the system. So the Eni, particularly Eni Norge, developed a simple ROV, okay, but was equipped with a series of sensors enabling the identification of the dispersal of different pollutants. And conversely to any passive tool, this clean sea system, for instance, can follow, the gradients of pollutants dispersed into in the deep sea to 4,000 meters depth, for instance, identify the source of dispersal. So the application of this tool, for instance, also in coastal systems for different kinds of contaminants could be useful for identifying spills, sources of contamination, even unknown contaminations in the field. So it's a very adaptable system. Okay, and the next system they were patented the year after is a double ROV system enabling to repair damage in an offshore platform at depth in case another oil spill accident occurs. So there are important technologies made by the industries. We should explore these technologies and adapt these technologies for the use of the routine monitoring, for instance. Then there is another way to use the biology to detect problems So for instance, another approach has been investigating, monitoring the behavior of the bivalves that you will see here, that the normal gapping is altered in case of altered environmental conditions. So no matter which is the source of contamination or problem, the alteration of the behavioral state can provide important evidence. What's the novelty? Is that this is related to the technology enabling the remote observation, so it's not just a matter of a scientist looking at the species and taking time for being things, but this is done automatically. And this is an important contribution that should be explored also in the future. We know that an aspect that is really little investigated within the marine strategy is the acoustic pollution, is the impact of noise. Because basically, the marine strategy is based on biological indicators of status, and there is little confidence in biologists, most biologists, with the proper technology required for noise. But we try to, to conduct some experiments. And this is the noise of some these little shrimps that are detected over the day. And they're the way they communicate, they find each other, they reproduce, and they interact. So the noise at sea is the way to communicate, and basically is important for the potential of reproduction. There is no way to look at each other, especially when you have a few centimeters of transparency in the water, but you can listen to each other. This is what happens. Okay, here we are. This is what happens if the ship, for instance, the trawling ship, passed by, and especially intense activity that you can see here. Please look. Okay, from 4 to 10 a.m., you see, there is no way to communicate because the trawling is distributed completely, so it's well above any other animal signal and communication. This means that, especially like for terrestrial systems, they are, for birds, for instance, they are unable to communicate when they have to find each other to say hello in the morning. And it is the optimal moment for their reproduction. So this is an aspect which has a little reservation. Okay, it's mine, of course, me too. But I think that we should explore a little bit in more detail that, and the marine strategy offers an important potential to develop geo-descriptor and find the acceptable noise and marine systems. Then a very important contribution to the marine strategy is also detecting the characteristic of the seafloor in terms of high resolution data on broad extent. Because we know that for instance, trawling is so intensive and so spread all over systems, North Sea, Adriatic Sea, and other systems, that is now a very global problem for regional seas and beyond. So the possibility to reconstruct the seafloor integrity over large scale is another important issue that should be considered. And now we have tools to do that. And these tools have been tested, integrated, validated by specific in situ analysis. Another sector is the expansion of molecular tools. The interview by Laura provided evidence that we need to believe in the molecular tools for a simple reason. Molecular tools means identifying organisms by their DNA. Okay, so this just in principle, if very easy. In the case of metabolic coding, it's just identifying species name. We have several problems in doing that still, but we have some good potential. I asked myself how long it takes to take 100 samples of the seafloor and to investigate the biodiversity from microbes to the megafauna. Take the sample, extract the animals, pick up the animals, then put the animals, then find the expertise to identify every single specific person. And then, do that for, 100 and 100 on animals. Maybe you have to take a subsample of that because it's too long. For nematodes, 100 nematodes every replicate and so on. And for the macrofauna, all organisms, but if there are not so many. it could take easily, if you want to investigate to species level, the entire fauna, 50 to 100 weeks. Lab time, Ancona, Italy, okay? Maybe in the north is another way. But make your estimates, okay? Make your estimates and give your value for that. And then look at the time could be required by a single person to pick up the animal, put the animals over a filter, put the filter and extract the DNA, make the amplification, and send that. In the 8 weeks time is considered 4 weeks for sequencing, high throughput analysis. But if you have, the Illumina closer to your desk, the time could be shorter. You understand that, coming back to the first slide, the point is that maybe we could be, much closer to the discovery of the entire, marine biodiversity. Maybe not within our generation, but maybe within much less than 700 years, we will be able to discover life if the molecular method is reliable. That is the point, because it's not reliable yet. Okay, this is for microbes is the solution. Passing from culturing, put microbes on the plate and do the molecular job has been an obligate step. And this is clear. We have to make the same jump, the same step also for larger animals, for other components, as we did for microbes. It's not easy, we know, but it's essential. Look at, for instance, at the application of molecular tools for the analysis of microbes. We say, easy. Well, but still, the analysis of the seawater quality for bathing, for instance, depends on the number of coliforms, streptococci in the water, right? And then we made the estimates, not just by plate count that is done by the agency, the local agency, that say you can swim here, okay? Because there are less than 100 coliforms, oh God, per 100 milliliters. We did that by molecular tools, and we found 3 orders of magnitude higher abundance by molecular tools than by culture tools. When you apply that to the animals, the problem is that still the databases are very, very limited. So possibly only 15% of the species we were able to identify were detected into the public database, general basic, and that is the effort we have to do. So keeping the knowledge of taxonomists, coupling this knowledge to the molecular analysis, the bioinformatics, implementing the data set, and expanding the knowledge of biodiversity. Another tool, and I'm concluding, microarray, for instance, was very promising. An entire EU project was devoted to the development of this microarray. Unfortunately, we tested that because it was a promising solution. Now you can test in one shot the presence of 50 dangerous species, harmful algae, whatever, but it doesn't work properly. So we can't use that at the place of current tools. We have always to use that concurrently with the classical analysis. And the autonomous reef monitoring structure, artificial structure, were a very, very interesting experiments we did on a very pan-European and beyond European borders to sample at once together with the same tools biodiversity. It was very effective, and we are working to the comparison of the results and also to comparison between classical taxonomy to the molecular analysis. Concluding, this has been a very brief overview of what we did in the last 4 years. So promising. The approaches and the technologies we use can be used in several descriptors of the Marine Studies Directive. The metabar coding is certainly essential in the detection of biodiversity, alien species, the species of commercial interest, the food webs, and so forth. And you can see here how the different approaches we use can be combined into different descriptors. But it's still sufficient. We have to go beyond that. And I think that on the basis of the devoted results, the member state can push the European community to implement further the strategy and the analysis of the ability to define tuning of the analysis of the descriptors. So thank you very much for your attention.